Is it?
Better
Yeah.
magnets.
For me too.
It would be bad, especially when you couldn't see.
Especially when we're live. Hello, everybody.
There it is.
Gotcha again. Anyway, this is going to be a fun show this week. I am very excited because I'm a bit of a gear geek. Are you guys?
I don't know. I don't know if I'd say I am.
I am. Bit of a nerd.
Sorry. I had to go the opposite direction.
All right. Well, let me turn that off because I'm listening to myself talk about being a gear geek.
That's okay.
Yeah. So tonight's show is the 2016 Holiday Gift Guide. Now, you may or may not know, but I work retail selling cameras full-time for the past 11 years. I work at Henry's in Newmarket, and as well, so does my good old buddy, Philip Zerato.
What's going on?
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Michael, you just love gear, and you shop and research and know about stuff and use it. Love it.
Yeah, and then wish I had enough money to buy it all.
Right? Isn't that the thing?
It's always how it works.
Well, tonight we're going to talk about some of this stuff. We're going to get into a lot of the fun gear. This show may run a bit long. I got to warn you. You not have to get to everything we have on the list, but it may go long nonetheless. When it comes to camera equipment, selling this stuff day in and day out, I see what people really want or think they want, and then maybe got more than they should have gotten or not enough. I mean, there's so many different variables and everybody has different needs. So my big thing when it comes to buying anything, I have a rule for myself. I'm just going to throw this out there at the beginning of the show. My rule is if I don't have to tell, or when I tell myself I need something 10 times, it's a good indicator that I need it. And it's not just a want. I don't know, what do you guys think of that rule?
I agree with that.
Sounds a lot like getting a tattoo.
Yeah, you know, same thing. It's just like anything. I mean, anything you're going to do seriously, spend a lot of money, get a tattoo, punch yourself in the face. You know, you just got to think about it properly and you know, don't just do it impulsively because that would hurt. So anyway, we're going to talk about some of the new things that have come out this year. We're going to get into some things that you may not have expected us to. Sliders, rigs, microphones. Well, obviously microphones because we love our sponsor. And of course, there's a lot of other good microphones besides Sennheiser.
Yes.
The cool thing about working,
they are good as well.
Oh, they're freaking awesome. And that's actually a really good thing. We had video training at our store in Newmarket by our buddy Ross, the photo video guy. And it was awesome. Phil, I don't know how you liked it, but I thought it was really good. I think
it was actually very good. I was surprised. Nice in-depth information,
but not too much.
No, just enough to.
Yeah, it was really usable stuff. So we're going to use some of that knowledge that Ross imparted on us, which is very practical and good, and give you guys some tips on some video product. We're also going to get into some lighting options and point-and-shoot cameras, waterproof cameras. I'm going through the list here, mid-range to high-end DSLRs, lenses, some really cool, funky lenses that came out this year. And we're going to talk a little bit about teleconverters because Ivan asked us to, and I think that's probably a good idea as well.
Sounds good.
So before we get into any of this stuff, obviously we're going to have a lot to talk about, so we're going to get into it sooner than later. But before we do that, let's just say, have we bought anything cool this year? Michael, what's the coolest thing that you got this year?
Definitely my knee lights.
You got some Godox.
Nice. Yes, I got Godox lights. They're actually rebranded. They're Strobe Pro, which I got from Calgary.
Nice.
They are wicked powerful.
Where have you used your new toys?
I've been using them in my little home studio here. They're battery-powered strobes, so I've actually been using them on location. If it's anything from outside, just in front of my house for one shoot, I've brought it out into some parks. I did a shoot out in the woods, in the forest, up in Georgetown for the masterclass. So
nice.
It's seen a little bit of everything.
Cool.
I've managed to come in the process.
But these are the things that you need and you use, and it's important to have. So sometimes you told yourself many times you needed them, so off that you went and got them.
That was my rule. I had to find something good and battery powered because I hate cords and I hate being stuck to a wall.
Yeah,
it's agreeable.
So Phil, how about yourself, man? What did you pick up this year?
I've been a couple things. I think actually, I would say this fancy chair is probably one of those. Nice that I have a chair that isn't falling apart and it's actually comfortable because I've been spending a lot of time in front of my computer recently. I'd say short of that, it's been more of a get everything going kind of thing. So I could count a website. I could count, getting into, using a tablet and a pen again, all kinds of things. But I kind of like the chair idea. It's comfy.
Well, it's also very valid. You spent some time away from photography in a way.
I did.
You're still teaching, you're still doing that at Durham, but you hadn't been as active as you are all of a sudden back again.
No, I took a little bit of time. I'm going to call it off from photography. I like to think that I retired for a time period. And I kept it mainly as something that I did for myself. And a couple things opened up, it seemed, that kind of made it look like a better option for me to get back started doing what I, to be honest, actually really enjoyed. Yeah. And so I got a lot of experience doing a couple other things, which was great because it really served its purpose of giving me, a fallback point, as well as it gave me a significantly better understanding of something that I, before I went through the whole process, didn't maybe fully understand to its limits. And so I'm happy to be back in doing things. And now I'm really going through something that pretty much everyone, I would think, watching this is going through, and that is the process of building and stabilizing a business.
Right. That's so hard. I mean, especially when there's so many people trying to do it, creating that niche. Well, good luck to you, my friend. And, we're always there for you if you need help with that.
Absolutely.
Cool. So for me, the big purchase, I'm not a big spender. In fact, Mr. Snaps, my D700, sadly, may have snapped its last snap. So I'm down to potentially one camera. The Schwartz, good old Schwartz D7100 Nikon. But for me, my big purchase was actually these funky little doodads, the VR Kicks.
Yes, they're pretty cool, though.
I'm stoked. I've been playing Battleship games, and I've been watching all kinds of neat stuff. It's VR glasses, and I still am wanting to try that augmented reality part where the camera shines through and you can, be in the environment and stuff like that. So it's just the start of something cool. I mean, these things are $70 and they're just, I love them. So anyway, that's my big thing. VR Kicks. It's not quite as cool as Godok's lights or anything.
But they're still pretty cool. They're on the edge of technology.
Ooh, I'm on the edge, the cutting edge. Me and my kicks. Yeah. All right, well, let's...
Anyway, enough saying.
Wind them up, and off he goes. Okay, let's go to the chat here. First of all, Christine says, good evening, gentlemen. Jason, hello to you. Gabriel's like, yes, you all have GAS, Gear Acquisition Syndrome, gas, full of gas. And Ivan is watching, says, hello to you, sir. All right, so let's get to our sponsors, because to me, I'm very excited about something this year. This right now, I should say.
I'm excited about it too.
Right? It's true. Okay, so here's the thing, guys. You all know that we have sponsorship from LensPen. You guys have been phenomenal for us since day one. For our photo contests that we run, our challenges, we give LensPen prizes. We also give some cotton carrier stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about some CC stuff today. Also, Sennheiser, we mentioned them earlier. You guys have been great to us so far. But we've just got a new gig, a new sponsor, a new cool thing. It's called, what's it called, Michael? You know all about this stuff.
It's called Atmosphere Aerosol. It's a really cool little, essentially fog machine in a can.
So we're all very excited about this because the thought of being out in the middle of the woods, taking pictures with light coming through trees, and you want to get that streaming smoky effect, just put a little can of aerosol from your bag and it lingers in the air for a while. And yeah, so this is really sweet. So we're super excited. Atmosphere Aerosol is on board with us now. When we get some product, we're going to show you how it works. We're going to walk you through how you could use it, and of course, give some away. Right? Why not? Let's give some away to our viewers. And of course, as always, I just want to thank Sigma and Gentech for hooking us up with some good glass over the years and continuing, hopefully, for next year. Yay! All right, guys. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of the show. If you're watching, you probably are already part of the Daytripper Photo community on Google+. If you're not part of it, check it out. And also, if you are watching on YouTube Live, click like, subscribe, share this with your friends, and let the whole world know that you're watching us, because this is going to be a lot of fun. All right. So let's get to this. Yes, Phil, I agree with that, by the way.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Before we go any further, I want to share a picture that I found earlier, and I thought it was really cute. And I know I'm sidetracking a little bit. I just need to get it pulled up. Hold on.
This is a banter show. I mean, technically, you're allowed to banter.
And I think people will find it adorable or terrifying. Let me just get it pulled up here. We can continue talking for a sec. Oh, there it is. Never mind, I got it. So I'm just gonna pull this little cute picture up I found here.
All right, while you're doing that, I'm just going to say howdy to Navi Noom. She's watching. Gord's watching. Carrie is also watching. You guys are awesome. We got a lot of viewers tonight. This is going to be a lot of fun. Cool.
I think so.
Go for
And
it,
just
Philo.
to kick it up a notch, here's something fun.
Okay. Oh, God. Oh, that is hilarious. Okay, for those of you watching, this is my cat, Dixie, who has the cutest little teeth, and she did this pose, and her little teeth were showing. Apparently, her little teeth weren't quite good enough. Phil, what did you do to my cat?
I saw the little teeth, and I was like, it would be really weird if there was actual teeth in there. And so I decided to copy it over. It took me a while to find that picture again, but
Oh, God, I hope Shelly sees this. You got to send me that. That's hilarious.
okay.
All right, cool. Thank you, Phil. You've made my day. I can go home now. All right, cool. So let's talk about some stuff, guys. We got some stuff to talk about.
Absolutely.
Now, Michael, we're going to start off with waterproof cameras because you asked me a question. Possibly, I don't know if you can talk about it.
Yeah, I had a
it's a-
friend that was looking at getting a new camera. Who's specifically interested in waterproof cameras, and I had to admit that I don't really know too much on the point and shoot side. So I turned that question to you guys.
Well, there
Okay.
you go. Phil, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's okay. There's a ton you can know on the point and shoot side of things, but I was going to say when it comes down to waterproof cameras, there really is, I was going to say 2, but technically 3, I guess, because going off your notes here, that I'd say are worth talking about. Unless you own one of the other ones, and they're good too.
No, they suck. No, I'm just kidding. So, okay, you want me to go on then?
Yes.
Oh,
absolutely.
fine. All right. So I'm going to go on. All right. So for the waterproof cameras, no, I agree with that. There are really 2. The third is more of a price alternative that is fairly reliable and does a decent job.
Yeah.
So the top 2, in my view, and I think, Phil, you agree with me on this, are the Panasonic TS5 and the Olympus TG4. So the TS5 is just a great camera. It's like $270. It'll last you a long time. It's got a Leica quality lens. It has all the features you need in a waterproof camera. It's fairly straightforward. Not talking about manual controls or things like that, but you can go down a good 30 feet in the water.
Yeah.
You could drop it from around 5 feet. It handles that kind of thing. You can use it in the cold and hot, whatever. The Olympus, though, is a bit different. The Olympus has a little bit brighter aperture lens. It's an f2, a little bit more light passes through. So if you're shooting in murky water, it probably would do a little bit better for you.
Okay.
Plus, you can also take off that little ring off the front of it and attach a telephoto lens or a wide-angle lens, I think a macro lens.
Cool.
A fisheye, a macro. Yeah, so there's like 3 different lenses, I think. Fisheye, macro, and telephoto.
Oh,
where
right
you
on.
can and still go underwater. So
Because it doesn't
that's-
go into the housing, it's attached on the outside.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Yep.
Uh,
So a little bit better, a little brighter lens, and the options for it's a few more dollars usually. It's maybe $40 more or something like that, but it's a pretty good camera too. So those are really the 2 that we really recommend. The Fuji XP90 though, solid contender. It's around
Absolutely.
$220, $200 if it goes on sale. Very decent option if you want something good. Now, the main point about waterproof cameras, and I'll get pissed off at anybody who doesn't do this because I've told family members to do this and they didn't, and they went to Cuba, where she just went again yesterday or today, my sister Josie, and she sees as I'm dead. But anyway, she takes it to her first trip, and of course the Panasonic just breaks because she doesn't do what I'm about to tell people to do. Okay, here it is, guys. If you're using it in salt water, rinse it off in fresh water when you're done. Get the salt off. Salt is corrosive. It sucks. It's going to hurt your camera. And rule number 2, as soon as it dries, you open up all the doors, the battery door, or any little compartments there are. You get an old gnarly toothbrush, and you literally just clean the seals off so that there's no salt crystals forming in there. If you can do that, your waterproof cameras will last you a very long time. Isn't that the biggest thing we see? Oh, there's moisture. There's fog on the inside of the lens. Well, did you rinse it off in fresh water after you were in salt water? No. Did you clean off the contacts? No.
Yeah.
Happens. So anyway,
Sadly.
that's our thought. There you go. I don't know if that helps you, Michael.
Yep. I did end up recommending the ones that you told me.
All right, cool. Well,
So
hopefully
we'll
they'll
see
work.
what happens there.
Now, there's so many other things too in the line of point and shoot. Now, we don't want to linger too much on point and shoot cameras because there are so many other things to talk about, and point and shoots make up a much smaller market. But who is buying those now? I tell you, people who have had point and shoots for a very long time and are just comfortable with it. They're compact. Put them in your purse. Put them in your pocket. Put them in a bag. You know, easy to carry around and relatively straightforward. People that don't want to think too much about making pictures, they just want to click and get a snapshot.
Yep.
At least in this category. We're talking cameras like the Canon SX720. Now, it's a good little camera with, I think, 40 times optical zoom. But it's small. It's really small, and that's what kills me about this thing. Now, Phil, maybe you can quickly go over what differentiates a point and shoot from an SLR, like sensor size, why that's relevant. How can we get these massive lenses in these little cameras?
Well, you nailed it right on the head. It comes down to sensor size. So in a normal DSLR, normal digital single lens reflex camera, we'll ignore the prism and the mirror and the shutter and all that kind of stuff. We effectively have a sensor that's either about 17 millimeters corner to corner or roughly 35 millimeters corner to corner, depending on if we have a full frame or an APS-C size. When we get into looking at point and shoots, your average sensor is probably about the size of your pinky fingernail. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little smaller, maybe a little larger, depending. And because it's so much smaller, the lens requirement is smaller. Because if I have a sensor that's the size of my pinky, I only need a circle of light that's that big. So instead of needing this big honking lens, I can have a tiny little opening and still achieve the same results, which is why we can why we can get like 400, 500 millimeter lens equivalents, if not more, inside such a tiny camera.
You got it. So this is the camera I'm talking about here. 40 times zoom, ridiculous telephoto lens, and a camera you can put in your pocket. Mm-hmm. When I first started selling cameras, a 10 times zoom was bigger than this. So they've improved, and it's a good little camera. You do have some manual capabilities, and you know it's got great video. Everything does video now. That's the big thing. Everything is video.
I think the next big thing is Wi-Fi, which is both an advantage and a disadvantage, depending on the brand you're looking at.
Yes, good point. Good point. Yeah, that's actually a very good point. So what do you mean by that?
Well, the idea of having Wi-Fi in a phone, Wi-Fi in a camera is usually twofold. One, it means that if you're out shooting, you can take a picture off your camera, put it on your phone, and put it online, do whatever you want from in the field. On some cameras, you can get into controlling the camera through an app on your phone. But the problem with Wi-Fi is kind of like the same problem we saw with DVD camcorders long ago. Sorry, there we go. And that is that everyone's doing it slightly differently. So Canon's system is different than Nikon, which is different than Sony, which is different than Panasonic. And because they're all doing it slightly differently, they all have their own apps. Some work, Canon, Sony, Panasonic. Some don't, Nikon. Not to point names or anything. Nikon. And so it's a feature, but it's not a feature. Because sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. And
Nikon.
Depending on what you're doing, sometimes a snap bridge will just really end up making you want to snap.
Yeah, they've got to fix that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of being a bit flippant, but it's true. A Wi-Fi is a funky deal, and if you get to use it and use it properly, it's really great. But keep in mind, too, when the Wi-Fi is turned on in your camera, your batteries are going to die. So remember to turn that off when you're done. Yeah. Okay, now, point and shoots, small, simple, straightforward. The next step up is what they call a bridge camera. Mm-hmm. Bridge cameras have more zoom, usually a little bit larger, easier to kind of grip onto, but obviously you need a little bit bigger camera bag. I think because Nikon has had such a hard year with product, I can't even really get into what options that they had. They have a P900, that massive 85 times optical zoom camera that
and they have a $120 waterproof camera. That's pretty much all I know about them right now.
Yeah, it's pretty much what we're talking about. And they have a B700, I think, that we have in the store, which is kind of like the old P530. It's like a big zoom, compact little guy.
Now, when it comes to bridge cameras, everyone kind of has one. Canon's got a couple, Sony's got a couple, Panasonic has a couple. Out of all of those, which ones tend to do the nicest job or potentially the most reliable job?
Well, I mean, the top I would say is Panasonic.
Mhm.
Canon and Sony, I think, are right up there as well.
Okay. Now, with Panasonic, do they still have that warranty coverage they used to have? It's been a while since I looked at it.
Now, it's pretty standard warranty.
Oh, okay, they got rid of the concierge. We send you a box, you send us a camera, etc.
Yeah, that was on their
bummer.
made in China cameras back about 4 years ago or so.
Okay.
And that's pretty much 1 year just repair these days.
Okay.
Now, yeah,
Good to
keep in
know.
mind, I mean, when you're buying a camera, you're buying electronics, you're carrying it all over the place with you. So warranty is pretty important.
Absolutely.
Now, the Canon lineup has two cameras that are very similar. I just kind of want to point these out. SX530 and SX540. Virtually the same camera. The difference is the 540 has manual controls. So you can put it to manual aperture priority, shutter priority, and actually control light. So for fireworks or things like that, the 540 is probably the route to go. And again, the reason we're talking about these cameras is these are the ones that you're going to find in Henry's and in Best Buy and in Sears or anywhere you go to buy a camera.
The main ones.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are the two, and everybody's going to be comparing which one should I get? Which one should I get? It's very simple. All cameras are very much the same core functions. The differences are like Wi-Fi or touchscreen, or this one has manual controls or this one doesn't. So kind of pay attention, and like anything, always think about what pictures are you trying to take, and that's the camera you buy.
Yeah. But I think it's important to note that manual controls aren't all equal. So the manual control you can get out of a point and shoot is not going to give you the same results that you'd get out of like a DSLR.
True.
Yeah, you can play around with the shutter and you can play around with the aperture, but it's not to the same extent. So if you have a DSLR and you're looking for a manual control point and shoot, it's going to work, but it's not going to potentially give you the same thing you're looking at that you'd get out of like a 5D Mark III or 5D Mark IV, unless you downgraded the size of your kit and went, let's say, mirrorless, where you still are essentially a DSLR without the LR portion of that.
We're going to talk about mirrorless in a second.
The L portion's still there, but the R portion isn't.
Yes, that is true. Something's
happening.
But there's still one more skew. Sorry, Michael. What?
I'm trying to do the math in my head. It's the R that's gone.
It is only the R that is gone.
The R, yes, reflex.
Yes.
Let's pretend we know anything about cameras here.
Okay, for those of you playing at home, SLR is single lens reflex, single lens. Still have that, and reflex is the mirror and all that kind of stuff.
And so a mirrorless is missing the R.
The reflex.
Until my new camera comes out, then we'll have 16 cameras and no reflex.
Yes, the fancy Lightro light.
The Light L16. I'm still so excited for that. I would call that a Christmas list thing to mention today, but it's kind of really expensive.
Well, this is the future. This is the way things are going to go. So, but for now, we still have one more group in this point and shoot bridge camera market, and I'm going to really recommend these to anybody looking for a point and shoot camera, lightweight, that will rival what some higher end cameras will do. And the Panasonic lineup, by far the best. FZ200, FZ300, both awesome cameras. FZ200 was the camera of the year by DP Review for like 2 or 3 years in a row. It was kind of long in the tooth. It didn't really have a lot of the latest and greatest toys and features and so on. So it lingered on for about 5 model years or so. Finally, they brought out the FZ300, which has weather resistance. It has Wi-Fi built in. It has a touch LCD screen. It has a feature even where you can focus after the fact. So you take your picture, you look at this little 4K video clip, you choose where you want your focus and save that as a separate image. Oh, yeah, it's 4K video. It does everything. And,
Cool.
Just the weather resistance part is the part I like.
And that's such a weird thing to find a point and shoot unless you buy a waterproof point and shoot. Because most of the time they're just a housing, effectively, like a plastic or a metal covering on top of a very compact circuit board.
Yep.
And so to get a weather sealed or weather resistant, I should say, and that's the difference. Point and shoot, you can be out in the snow and be like, it's fine. As opposed to being like, well, I probably shouldn't get this thing remotely wet.
You're safe. I was actually using it in an ice storm on the ground in an ice storm with the screen closed and everything, just kind of taking pictures of my car during that ice storm last April. And I was sitting underneath the canopy, dry with my cell phone, using the Wi-Fi and taking pictures, and it was kind of neat.
Yeah.
But anyway.
That's an example of when the Wi-Fi works, which is an amazing feature to have. But not all cameras have it, and if you don't, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, and some cameras have snap bridge.
Yes.
Nikon's never going to like me. Anyway,
I don't know. Not as much as you like them.
not as much as I like them. That's true. All right, so the mirrorless camera. Phil was talking about this before. Michael, what kind of experience do you have using a mirrorless?
The only mirrorless I've truly used was the Fuji X100S.
So
I ended up buying one of those
technically,
used, and then I had to sell it again. But it was awesome to work with when I did have it.
beautiful camera, not quite a mirrorless. That's not interchangeable lens, right?
It's not an interchangeable lens.
Right. So it is a large sensor,
Mhm.
advanced point and shoot. But awesome. Sorry, I'm not being that guy.
It's close. It was really close.
Brian, you're being that guy.
I'm being that guy.
It was their fixed lens counterpart of their mirrorless system that
And
it
it is
had the
beautiful.
same sensor, a lot of the same features. I just didn't have interchangeable lenses, which I didn't mind. It was a really good street candid camera.
Absolutely. That and the X70, Fuji is brilliant.
I think that was the most interesting thing about that camera was the low light performance and the fact that you couldn't hear it.
Electronic
It
shutter.
was the perfect little ninja camera.
That's a cool thing. And that's actually a really good point. That goes directly to what a mirrorless camera does as well, where the shutter mechanism doesn't necessarily work the same way. So you end up with a very silent shutter. You can literally turn it off. So you don't hear
In some
anything.
cameras, yeah.
Mhm.
So that's something that's really cool about them. I like to call them the mirrorless interchangeable lens format, but most people don't like that acronym.
It is a little bit longer.
Well, some people like a MILF. Instead of
I knew that was going somewhere.
well, you know how it is. Anyway, so these cameras are phenomenal. They have large sensors. They have lots of different lenses to choose from. And there's a couple right now that are really, everybody wants these two cameras. And what kills me is, okay, the Olympus EM1.
Mhm.
The EM1 was their flagship mirrorless camera. Beefy body, magnesium chassis, solid, weather-resistant camera. Lots of features, including PC port, so you can hook it up to studio strobes, and
Yes.
lots of other cool features. So for a while, this camera was kind of owning the Olympus market, and now they brought out the Mark II. So, of course, nobody wants to buy any camera now because they're all waiting for the Mark II. But, of course, when the Mark II comes out, nobody will buy it because they're waiting for the Mark III,
Yes.
which will be rumored a day after the Mark II is in people's hands.
if not before.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, these cameras are fast and very sharp. And because the Olympus specifically has a little bit smaller sensor, focusing is even easier to work with as well. Focus for smaller sensors, you get more depth of field. So it gives you a little bit easier focus in some cases. But the electronics in these things is ridiculous. That one, the Sony mirrorless A6500 is coming in now. All these cameras that if you want something mirrorless, they're so fast and they're so light.
Yeah.
They're not cheaper alternatives though.
No. And in some cases, I'm going to actually just directly call Fuji out. They are not smaller alternatives. Because the Fuji body by itself is smaller. But once you add a lens onto that thing, some of those lenses are massive.
Well, you said it yourself, Phil. Sensor size.
Yeah.
Makes bigger lenses.
Yeah.
Right. And the Fujis have the same kind of sensor size as a Nikon DSLR.
Yeah. Now, in theory, the lenses should be able to be smaller. Because what you get when you switch to a mirrorless body from a standard DSLR is you effectively cut the convergence distance for the lens from the back of the lens to your sensor. You effectively cut that in half. So you go from an average of about 40 millimeters to an average of about 20 millimeters. And because of that shorter distance, you in theory can have smaller lenses, which is why when we first saw the mirrorless come out, we had a lot of smaller lenses.
Mhm.
But in an effort to have stabilized lenses, 2.8s all the way through, if not less, or more of an opening, depending which way you want to think about it, they've gotten back to being larger. So there's this giant misconception with people that are like, well, I want to sell off all of my Nikon gear and buy a mirrorless system because it's smaller. But it's not really smaller.
No, if you look at the footprint of a Fuji compared to the footprint of a Nikon D5500, the 5500 probably fits the hand better.
Yeah.
And even a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's true, and that's a camera that's a killer camera too. When you get into the SLR market, true SLR with the mirror and the flappy doos, technical, got to be technical here.
Absolutely, science.
Science. The D5500 is ridiculous. It's like 14 stops of dynamic range, 39 points of autofocus. Things loaded for bear.
It's a great little camera.
Great high definition video, and not full HD. Now that we know.
Close enough.
Very close. Awesome video quality. And so let's talk about some DSLR comparisons. Some people these days are coming in a lot and they're saying, well, why don't I buy a T5i or a T6i, or why don't I get a T5 or a T6? The Rebel lineup, I don't think, has ever been more confusing.
Especially because they are either inexpensive, T5, still a good camera, more expensive, SL1, older technology, or a T6 series. Especially when we get into things like the T6S, which I am actually a bit of a fan of, because Canon's starting to blend the Rebel series, which is normally a control the camera from the back, to you have a tiny top LCD screen now. It kind of feels like a 70D or an 80D, just miniaturized. So I'm curious to know where they're going to go with this, because I would like to see all of these entry-level cameras get rid of the back screen for controlling everything and go to the tiny top LCD screen. Yeah. So if this is a show of what's to come, that's, I think, a good thing. But it still doesn't make it less confusing that they all pretty much do the same thing.
Agreed. Michael, what do you think? No, we're just talking blah 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 models. We're just waiting for your head to explode.
Yeah. No, I really don't have much input to put on that one. So.
Well, really, what we're thinking about here is a good DSLR that's convenient, right? And for the general user, myself included, you, Phil, Michael, whatever, what features do we really need? What's important to us as photographers?
Pictures being taken when I press a button on the top.
Some video would be nice now.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, in my blind case, probably like triple the magnifying glass options for the viewfinder.
Wow, look at that. See, we're inventing our own camera now.
Because I've got a magnifying glass actually attached to the viewfinder on my camera, and it's awesome.
You know there are diopter extenders, right?
Yeah, I think that's what he effectively has.
Okay, good.
I've got one I've attached it right on, but even with that, when I'm in low light or when I'm having any sort of issues where there's not enough contrast or not grabbing focus well enough, I can't see well enough to know.
Wow, that's tough.
So instead of being a DSLR rather than mirrorless, I don't get the convenience of just peeking the live view screen and hoping that I get it right, because by the time I hit the shutter, I'm going to be 6 inches away from my subject.
Jeez. What about using like an LCD screen as a monitor? Would that help if it was
run that through live view, so you have to manually focus that?
Yes.
Yeah, because when you're using the shutter when you're on live view, it takes a little bit longer for the whole contraption to actually work. And at the same time, I'm not holding it against myself as well. I'm holding it out here, and with a big heavy camera like the D800 holding it out here, I'm going to shake and miss focus no matter how well I've got it accurately. So
yeah, that's valid.
It's a luxury that you don't really have with a bigger camera that I find is really convenient on mirrorless formats. It's just so light, there's not as much camera shake. And half of them have vibration reduction anyways.
One thing I have noticed though, and this is on like day trips, any camera that uses an LCD screen as your monitor, when you're shooting at night, you're shooting fireworks or light painting or things like that, getting focus is harder than any other kind of camera.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see what you're looking at. The screens just don't show that information. What were you saying, Phil?
I was going to say, especially as a lot of them are like electronic focusing rings on some of the mirrorless lenses, which means you really don't get the same feel for it that you do if it was a standard manual ring for focus.
Yeah.
There's no, I don't know. In theory, it's the same thing, but you're missing that, almost that feedback to know, right, that's where I need to stop, as opposed to...
Yeah, it just keeps on going and going.
Yeah.
Oh, wonky do.
Super technical tonight.
Again, that's how we roll. So the mirrorless cameras are excellent for certain things.
Yep.
I'm not going to use a mirrorless camera for light painting. Probably, I'm not going to really get it when I'm shooting my fireworks or steel wool or any of the stuff that I do at night, because I've seen people have trouble. And keep in mind, batteries die like crazy in mirrorless cameras because the screen is always on.
Mm-hmm. And that's potentially the biggest downfall, is that your shooting time, you don't have an option of not powering the screen up at all. You have to.
Yeah.
Or on some of them, you do have a little viewfinder and you can use that. But even still, that's a tiny screen. It's, even if you're just looking through it to compose your shot, you're pulling battery. So it's always a drain.
And then you end up carrying extra batteries, and there's your extra weight.
Yes.
So let's talk about some DSLR stuff. Some real talk about DSLR. The major players, other than the Rebels, and we never really clarified the differences. So let's get back to that for a sec. Squirrel. Yep. So T5 is a very bare bones camera. No tilt screen, very straightforward. DSLR.
Yep.
You have a 4,000th of a second shutter speed down to 30 seconds, so it's going to be able to do a lot of stuff.
Yep.
But you can't use a wireless remote control. Doesn't have a sensor. The ISO only goes so high before it goes poopy.
Well, it just stops letting you go higher.
And stops letting you go higher. They aren't the fastest focusing. They're not using the best processor. They're not using the best sensor available. They're just an entry point price range for somebody to get into a DSLR.
Still great cameras, though.
Yeah.
You might not go shoot, Formula One or a wedding, but they're going to be great for you to figure out what you're doing. So for that 14-year-old who wants to get into DSLRs, that's a good point to start at, as opposed to something like a 5D.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's valid. Absolutely. Now, the T5i, the cameras with the eye, they have the LCD screen that spins around.
Yep.
They have stereo sound for the video. They have a wireless option in the front. They have better focusing. They have the higher end sensor and processors. So they're pretty quick. They do a good job. Now, Phil, you mentioned the T6S.
Yep.
That is their video specialty option. That's why it has the panel on top. Because if you're shooting video and you've got your screen tilted down, you can check all your gauges on the top control panel.
Yep.
So you're right. It's a kind of a blend of a D80 and a T6i. A D80 is their video specialized crop sensor camera. But ADD.
Those of us who like Canon.
Yeah, I'm still living in the Nikon world. The ADD. Sorry, thank you.
Well,
ADD.
people just need to name their cameras their own thing instead of being like, well, we're just going to take their name and move the D.
That's right. They should name it the Schwartz or something like that.
I'm waiting for the day that a camera company comes out and says, you know what? Instead of all these numbers, we're just going to name it things.
This camera's Bob. This is the
It's
Bob
just
series.
like, that would be awesome.
I think so
It's
too.
like, how we kind of did that with cars. And then BMW is still like, you can buy the new 2016 BMW Z9 3-6-4M.
And
You're like,
M is the
I'll stick
specialty
with
model.
the Corolla. I can remember that.
That's right. Okay, so there's your breakdown on the Rebels.
Yeah.
They're all
Although
good.
a Nikon Corolla would be a funny camera.
Nikon Corolla.
We used to have brownies.
Finally have a name for my D800.
Corolla.
Nice. Better than the Adam Corolla. What?
I don't know. Follow.
He's a comedian. He's not very good.
Okay.
Bum.
Speaking of things that aren't very good, D750 and D810.
What?
Whoa. Hey.
Whoa, hater. Gotta hate it over there.
Okay. I'm completely envious of the D810. I have the 800, and when I was still in Humber, someone in another class had the D810, and what a camera. What a camera. It's fantastic. Megan actually has the D750, and I got to say, low light performance, the shutter on it, everything about this camera. Everyone's giving it fantastic reviews, and it's so light.
Okay, well, I'm just waiting here. I'm just waiting until you guys are done because I got words.
No, I agree. D750 is a good, solid camera. It is a bit lighter. It's not as heavy as the D810, but still feels like a really good camera.
So here's something that I'm curious about. I want to ask you guys if you have any thoughts on it, because I never understood why, the D750, as good as it is, as phenomenal as it is, I have the D800, the D810, both have an 8,000th of a shutter speed maximum.
Right.
The 750 and the 610 cap out at 4,000th of a second.
Yep.
Where did that extra?
One's a pro body and one's not.
But why?
Okay, now that's the funny thing.
It was so close to being such a good body. All the pros are buying it. It is the mandatory second camera for most pro shooters.
So here's my take on this, if I may. I was seriously considering the 750 when it was being announced. And as soon as I realized it only had a 4,000th of a second, I was like, come on. My D7100 has an 8,000th of a second.
Yep.
It doesn't make, and it's not a pro. It's not a pro body, the 7100, right? So I was like, what are you guys thinking? Why are you doing this? So I went through my database. I went through Lightroom, and I checked all of my photos based on shutter speed to see how many times I actually needed more than a 4,000th of a second shutter speed. I found maybe 10 photos.
Yeah.
9 of those were because the ISO was too high, shooting with a 1.8 lens.
And that's the thing. Like, if you don't have 8,000th of a second, you can get around that. You can get around that by, if you are shooting outside on a bright day at 1.8 or 1.4, put an ND filter on the front. Brings down the light, fixes the problem.
Now we're defending a stupid thing.
Yes, well, it doesn't make sense.
That's what gets to me, though, is that it's such a stupid thing. Why, of all things?
I know. Well, you know, they got to cut corners somewhere.
Well,
if they did that, they wouldn't sell the D810.
Well, the fact is, it's probably the same shutter mechanism in both, and they probably have it software limited. So I'm sure there's someone out there who's gone through and installed pretend Nikon firmware on their camera and gotten around that.
They hacked it.
Like years ago when they took the XTI, hacked it, and gave it live view. Somehow the camera didn't explode, but it had live view. So it's probably just a limitation built in to prevent people from using it.
On the topic of stupid limitations, I came from the D7000, which had an infrared sensor. So you could use their cheap little trigger that's like, it's $20, little infrared trigger, and you can trigger your camera from a distance without touching it. Infrared, awesome, 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 awesome. The D750 also has that wireless function. I ended up giving that trigger to Megan. No, actually, I sold mine. I helped her find one. But it's an awesome trigger to have. D800 costs so much bloody money. No infrared sensor?
No, it's an option. It's a separate sensor you have to buy for it.
And
but also,
I know what they're thinking.
Use Wi-Fi to trigger it too.
You could, but then you have to use SnapBridge.
No, 750 is not SnapBridge.
750 is not SnapBridge? Okay.
It's good old-fashioned Wi-Fi.
Going to the 810. I imagine they didn't include an infrared trigger because they're assuming, hey, it's a pro body. You're probably not taking pictures of yourself. But that's not what a wireless remote's good for. Most wireless remotes, if you put your camera to bulb, will still trigger it to open and trigger it to close on 2 separate presses. And if you're on a tripod, 2-second self-timer, remote. Remote's instantaneous. I'd go with that option. So it's more useful than just selfies.
Yeah, and I use a corded remote most of the time anyway. Corded remotes to me are the way to go because you have that positive control, no battery power, not gonna die off in the middle of the night if it's cold. Let's get to the chat here for a quick second. Jason says, I have a T5i and I was looking at the Canon 7D or 80D as a next step. Thoughts? Okay. Phil, you want to start?
Well, I would say that you're thinking of it correctly. A lot of people tend to go from like an XTI to a T3i to a T6i, but they stay in the Rebel series. And upgrading from Rebel to Rebel, unless it's 8-9 years old, there's not a huge point to that. So going from a Rebel to a more, I'm going to call it complete body, is a good option. Now, the 70 and 80 seem very similar. 80 is a little faster to focus in video mode or live view, and I believe it focuses a tiny bit faster outside of that as well. It's newer technology. I'd probably go to that one. If it's slightly out of the price range, I'd drop to the 7D.
Okay, I get you. Sorry. For a second, I thought you were saying the 70D versus the 80D, but yes, 7D versus 80D.
No, I was going 70 versus 80.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, because they're not that different in my understanding.
Well, he's asking about 7D.
Oh, okay. Sorry. See, this is the problem when everyone names their stuff the exact
It's so
same.
stupid.
7D versus ADD. So yeah, 7D Mark 1 versus ADD. It sounds funny, but I might go ADD.
I probably would too.
If it's 7D Mark II versus ADD and you have the money, go Mark II.
Hells yeah, buddy. Mark II is 10 frames per second, full of juiciness. It's a sports camera. Okay. Here's the breakdown. If you're more of a videographer, go for the ADD.
Yes.
If you're more of an action sports, get out in the middle of nowhere and have a camera take a bullet for you, buy the 7D Mark II.
And the way I also would look at it is ADD, you'd probably upgrade in 2 to 4 years. 7D Mark II, you'd probably upgrade in 4 to 6 years, depending on how much you like upgrading.
The ADD users, those are the ones that are just all over the place, and they can't.
The
really
ADD
focus.
Users,
yeah, they can't focus on anything. They get 12 different cameras, and
yeah, and all their stuff sits in a box on the shelf.
Yeah, no, that's the breakdown. One's a sports and action beefcake, and the other is a great video beefcake. So, take a pick.
One's going to last a bit longer than the other. You're getting into a weather-resistant body or weather-sealed body, more metal, a little bit more robust on the shutter side. So 7D Mark II will last longer, in theory, than an ADD would. On
the bench, yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, sitting him down, taking pictures at the same time. One's going to crap out earlier than the other.
Just like, the Nikon D700 is supposed to be, 150,000 actuations?
Somewhere around there.
And mine pooched out at 77,000. So anyway, you never know. You never know. Kerry says, I agree. He has the D800E. Awesome. D800E was the one without the anti-aliasing filter.
Yes.
And he wishes he had the D810. Now, I had an opportunity to shoot with the D800, not the E, at a wrestling match. And I was shooting a dark-skinned wrestler against a dark background, and the D800 skipped off to the edges. I just couldn't get focus. A10, no problem. So, yeah, focusing is pretty sweet on the 810. Jason, thanks, guys. You're very welcome. Very cool. Christine says, how many cameras do you own and still use? I wonder who she's asking.
Let's say all of us.
Michael, how about you start on this one?
I only actually own my D800 now. I did have the D7000 and the Fuji X100S. I ended up selling both of those. Now I've only got my 800 and a few lenses, but it's really all I need right now.
Okay.
I am looking forward to getting my L16 because once I have that, that's going to be my always in a pocket on me at some point camera. So, because the D800 is an awesome camera, but it's a little bit big to be carrying around literally everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
What about you, Phil?
Well, I have the Mark III that I would call my main camera, the one that I would use most. I have a little point and shoot that exists somewhere. I'm honestly not sure where. And I do have
on your mystery
these guys back here.
Yes.
And they all, for the most part, I'd say about 90% of them still function. And if I wanted to, I could load a roll of film through them. And so I think I have film in a couple of them right now. The only thing that makes me not shoot them more is the fact that it's just stupid when it comes to processing them. Yeah. Back when it was like $6 and I could get a roll of whatever film I had developed, that was great. Now that it's, if I want to shoot black and white, I mail it to a place in Toronto and they develop it for like $20 and send it back to me. And then I have to scan it in. I'm a little hesitant to shoot as much film as I used to.
It takes the fun out of it.
It does. So I mainly shoot with my digital now.
Yeah. Cool. I had Mr. Snaps. I still have him. He's with the repair guy right now. He's with the doctor. And see how that turns out. Mr. Snaps, my D700. And my main camera currently is the Schwartz, the D7100, which I wouldn't trade for anything. I love this little thing. It's not a big camera. It's not. Like,
it's still a decent size, though.
Well, yeah, it fits the hand, Like, okay, now I'm not 5'2". I don't have hands this big. I have these. So, yes, it's nice to have a bit of a grip. But that's why I use the cotton carrier, right? Simple. I have the little hippie-doo that I put on my waist. And I just kind of clip that sucker in there. And it's funny, I love Ross. I love his reviews. And he made a comment about how these things will hurt your hips and stuff like that. And I get it. trust me, I get it. If you have a back straight issue, I could see how hanging your camera on the side of your hip could hurt. It hasn't hurt me. I've been fine with it. I love it. So there's an option for you if you want to carry a decent camera around with you. By the way, that hand strap cotton carrier works perfectly fine on those little Panasonic FZ 300s too, which is pretty neat. And other than that, my main camera that I use every day is my cell phone.
We all forgot about those.
Yeah, the cell phone is, I probably take more photos with that than anything. It does a great job. I mean, I used to use Shirley.
Surely you can't be serious.
Ha ha ha.
Damn it, don't call me Shirley.
Look at you, so punny.
Just want to say I have a strap here for someone that I need to deliver to at some point.
Is that somebody who's been asking us this question?
Potentially, because I have put it in my drawer here and promptly forgot about it. So I apologize. I will get this to you.
Well,
We'll figure it out. We also need to go shooting.
Mailing things directly to Christine.
Might be the best option.
Yeah, I might just do that.
That courier system's not terribly reliable.
I'm sorry, Christine. It's not my fault.
Yes.
Okay, so the D750 versus the D810. 750 low light beast, 24 megapixel full frame. Awesome. Check this out. Look at this thing. See if I can do this. I like
Christine commented in the YouTube chat, no comment.
Now, you may not be able to tell,
But that's a Tesla.
This is a Tesla. Shot at
Apparently
20.
He was able to tell.
Yeah, right. You can tell at 20,000 ISO. You can tell.
That's
20?
a lot of ISO.
That's a lot of ISOs. This is 20,000. Unedited, Wi-Fi'd from the camera to my phone and not touched or edited.
That's awesome.
So come on, tell me another camera that can shoot 20,000 ISO and have this kind of clarity. You can read electric vehicle parking only.
Yeah.
You can read all the stuff. Warning. You know, I can't really read something about children in carts. You should run over them. But, you know, I could read that over there. So, yeah,
That's
pretty
really good. Surprisingly good.
It is. It is, truly. So anyway, that's why I thought I would just let you know. The D750 is a beast. However, the D810 is a 36 megapixel beast. So for studio, when you want to crop in, do extreme landscape, real estate photography, or anything where you're trying to go wide and big and lots and lots and lots of pixels so you can print large or crop a lot more.
Or do a panorama big enough to break your computer.
Exactly. So there's a D810. And the 5D Mark III, Mark IV comparison, you know, Phil, I'm going to let you field this one because you're the Canon guy.
Well, I don't actually have that much to say about it. I know that Mark IV has a better dynamic range, and that's the thing the 5Ds kind of lacked throughout the past is the dynamic range has been kind of lacking. So the dynamic range is definitely the biggest improvement. You know, ISO and that kind of thing's an improvement as well. But it's, to me, the thing that I would upgrade for is the improved dynamic range.
What about the video?
Video's better, but at the same time, depends on what you're trying to shoot. If you're shooting more pictures, dynamic range is important. Shooting video, yeah, dynamic range is important. But if you're going to shoot a lot of video, and that's your main thing, it might not be the best camera to begin with.
And we're going to get into why, in fact, very soon. I really, really liked Ross's presentation. It really taught me quite a bit. I appreciate him doing that. It was very cool. Okay, but before we get into that, lenses.
Yes.
Running low on time. We're going to briefly go through it. There's wide lenses, telephoto lenses, macro lenses, teleconverters. That's too brief. Okay, now, what I find a lot of people asking for is an ultra-wide lens. They have a Rebel, they have a D7100 or a D5500, and they want juicy wide, but not fisheye.
Yes. Still rectilinear correct.
Rectum nearly killed him? What?
Edges are straight. Wait, did you say America?
I said nerd.
Oh, okay.
No, it's true. Edges maintain straight. There's a bubble.
Yeah.
So the major ones that we talk about are the 10 to 20, 10 to 22, and 10 to 24. Canon makes a 10 to 22, Nikon makes a 10 to 24, and Sigma comes in with the 10 to 20.
Yes.
Which to me is the most logical choice.
Yes.
Because most lenses start at 18. So from 20 to 22 to 20 to 24, there's really no big benefit there. You're overlapping.
And for a lens that usually comes in at $150 to $200 cheaper than the equivalents, is built as good, if not better than some of them, and is equally sharp, I have no problem saying the Sigma is a great option.
I agree. You're talking $200 to $400 cheaper.
Yeah, for an awesome lens, a lens that will work as long as it's not on a full frame body.
That's the kicker. That is the kicker. It's a DX lens. It's made for crop sensor cameras, but you have a 7-year guarantee compared to Canon's 1 year.
Yep.
Nikon has a 5-year, so it's still better. And Sigma, Gentek, come on, service. You can't get better.
Well, I brought my lens in to get it serviced probably about a month ago now, and it wasn't as sharp as I thought it should be. I have a 50mm 1.4 with them, and I brought it in, dropped it off, left. They called me about 2 or 3 days later saying, yeah, it's done. We calibrated everything. It's all good. Come back and pick it up. And it was great. It's a little bit sharper now because it's a bit older, so it had the 10-year warranty on it. I didn't have to pay anything.
Yeah.
I don't know when that lens was bought because I actually received it used. So it's outstanding that I didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I can get behind.
And this is why I'm so happy that Gentek helps us, sponsors the show and everything like that. They have good service. They're good people. And they have good product.
I want to make a side note. The people at the service counter had no idea who I actually was. I know that makes it sound like I'm someone fancy, but they had no idea. To them, I was just a random person coming in getting a lens calibrated. So I didn't receive any. I didn't receive any special treatment or anything. So that was normal stuff. So I'm curious, go back and be like, Daytripper Photo. I don't know what I'm writing at Gentek, but business cards or something.
Yeah, right. Exactly, right? Rating business cards. That's all I got. Okay, yeah, it's funny. No, it's true. Sigma's great value, and seriously, that I would get that. And when we're talking about ultra wides or primes or telephotos, they're always a good value.
Yes.
Now, if we're talking about prime lenses, before we get to that, Gord says the 14 to 24. That would be the ultra wide lens of choice if you're a Nikon shooter.
Yes.
However, I probably would end up with a 1635.
Yeah, I second that vote.
And I think the reason for that is the filter capabilities. You know, you have a 77 millimeter Miller beer filter thread, so you can add NDs to that. You can get the Koken $18 little 77 mil ringy do and get it again. Technical terms. What is with me? Ringy do?
Only the most technical.
I'm horrible.
Or you can buy a variable neutral density and make your pictures into donuts.
Oh God, that's just horrible.
For those of you watching, that might not be your best option.
Don actually just made a comment. He says he does a lot of night photography as in star trails and also daytime scenery. And with his crop sensor, he always wants wider. So the Sigma 10 to 20 sounds good. It really is. It's actually very effective. It does a good job. It's lightweight. Seriously. Awesome. What was stuff like 650, 550, something like that?
I think it's 550 right now.
Yeah.
And that's, again, like $200 cheaper than everyone else. And it's an awesome lens. If I could put it on my camera and have it work properly, I would.
See, that's the cool thing. You can actually attach it to a Nikon full frame.
Well, I can too. It'll just vignette terribly.
Yes, actually, Sigma will connect to the Canon, won't it?
Yes.
Just the Canon lenses won't.
Nope.
Right. Carrie says, as a wide prime, what do you think of the 20 millimeter Sigma Art?
Well, it's got art behind it. So it's
That's
immediately awesome. But it's almost a bit too wide for a lot of things.
Again, it depends on what camera we're talking about,
Yeah.
right? If you're talking about a crop sensor, that's more like a 25 mil, so it's pretty good.
Well, more like 30.
Well, your Canon, sorry.
Well, Nikon would be 30. Canon would be 32.
20 times 1.5?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you're right, because I don't do math. Remember, thingy do.
Okay.
That's how
I was trying to figure out how many times like 6 went into 20 the other day, and I was like, maybe if I divide it. 6 divided by 20. And I was like, what am I doing?
Classic.
Yeah, I went badly.
I do have to say for Carrie, I can't really speak for the 20 specifically. I do agree with Phil that, at least for me, it's a little bit too wide. I'm more biased to the 24. But I have the Sigma 35 mil art lens. Megan has the 24 mil art lens. I have nothing but good things to say. So absolutely, without a doubt, if you decide that 20 millimeters is the right focal length for you, as a prime lens, the Sigma Art, anything is going to blow the rest of them out of the water.
Yes.
They're just way too sharp, way too well performing. They're phenomenal lenses.
Yeah.
Well said.
But on that note, try the 24 first and see if that's the right size for you, because 20 is quite extreme.
Yeah. And now it sounds, I just want to make a side note here. It sounds like a 20 and a 24 wouldn't be that different. But when we get into the wide angles, the lower the millimeter, the difference of 4 millimeters is actually huge when we think about our viewing angle. When we get into telephoto side of things, there's a mosquito in here. When we get into the telephoto side of things, the difference between 250 and 300 isn't that big. The difference between 24 and 20, that can be an extra couple degrees. You being able to see the entire room, or maybe a little too much.
Yeah, even going from 28 to 24 when I was testing wider lenses was a brutal difference. It was completely game-changing in some cases.
Absolutely. I've used the 24 quite a bit, actually, and I love it. Love it, love it, love it.
But swinging over to the idea of telephoto lenses, I just want to talk about something quickly because we have a couple of lenses to talk about, but I want to make sure we fit it in, and that's teleconverters. There's a couple different teleconverters available. A couple different manufacturers make them. Sigma makes some, Canon, Nikon, etc. But with a teleconverter, it kind of is like a wide-angle lens. It depends on what you're trying to do with your lens to figure out what teleconverter would work. There's a couple things you got to think about with a teleconverter. I was opening that for someone to pick up, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm perfectly happy to step in, or Michael, whatever. But you're on a roll, so
okay.
I know next to nothing about teleconverters.
So the role of a teleconverter, for those of you who might not be familiar with them, is basically to take a lens like a 70 to 200 and make it larger. So if you had a 2 times teleconverter, your 70 to 200 would turn into a 140 to 400 millimeter lens.
Multiplies it by the factor of the teleconverter.
Absolutely. And so if we're thinking about teleconverters, we're actually adding an extra piece on the back of the lens that has extra glass in it, its own opening. So what generally happens is we lose light. So if we put a teleconverter on the back of our lens might go from something like 2.8 to f4. So it's going to darken the lens down, let less light in. And for that reason, some of them don't work on everything. If you have a lens that is already at 5.6, already not letting in a ton of light, a teleconverter may not function with that lens.
Yeah, a big reason for that is it just won't let enough light through. The sensors, the focus detectors inside the camera won't sense that light well enough because your aperture is now like f11, and it's not hitting any of the contrast detectors or whatever, and you just won't focus.
Yeah.
They become
manually focus, but autofocus will become next to impossible. So teleconverters can work, but it really depends on what lens you're using it with and what your goal is for it.
Absolutely. So if you do have a 2.8 lens, you can go with a 2 times teleconverter and still have enough light pass through. It's a 5.6, right? F2.8 times 2 is 5.6.
Math was off.
I think there's actually a measurement somewhere with some cameras on what their autofocusing capabilities are to a certain aperture.
Absolutely. Most of them that are new as of last year or beyond are f8.
Yes.
So the better cameras can autofocus to f8, and if you go beyond that, then you start running into
guaranteed.
Right, exactly.
That's a really important thing to look at if you are looking for teleconverters. See if you can find out what your autofocusing limit on your camera is, and try to do the math of what lens you're going to use and what aperture your telephoto is going to turn your lens into.
On that point, if anybody had like a 150 to 600 Sigma Sport or Contemporary, the aperture at 500 mil is f6.3.
Yes. So
if you put if you put a 2 times teleconverter, that would be a problem. But they actually work well, and they're starting to be bundled with the 1.4. So now, instead of a 600 millimeter lens, and let's just say we're on a D7100, 600, and we're going to do times 1.5 because of the crop factor of the camera. And now we
back is
added
easier.
1.4 times teleconverter. You're at a 1260 millimeter lens.
Which is massive.
You're
not
getting the
handholdable.
moon filling your frame of your camera of your
Yes.
viewfinder. It's filling the frame of your viewfinder of the camera. So that's pretty sweet. Now the problem with that then becomes the shutter speed has to be faster than that too. So
Yes.
if you're going to use a teleconverter, there's a lot of factors to think about, like Phil said. Think about them and make the right choice. But remember, you can try stuff before you buy it.
Yeah.
Or you can try and return it, whatever.
Yeah. Fiddle and play.
Fiddle and play. So anyway, yeah, as far as which ones to choose, if you're going to be buying a teleconverter, I always suggest get the newest one. They just seem to get faster and more efficient every single time.
You
The
might be
version
saving
3,
$200 to go to something that's older, but if it's going to be aggravating in the field and it's going to prevent you from getting the shot you want, it's not worth it.
yeah. Okay, so let's get into quickly some sweet little lenses. We're just going to quickly go through these because these just are worth mentioning. First of all, the Tamron 15 to 30 f2.8. If you do have a full frame and you want to go juicy wide and you don't want to spend $3,000, Tamron 1530, solid choice.
Yep.
Nikon. This is something that my little buddy over here is going to love. Blah, blah.
Yes.
Michael.
I am excited for it, and I don't
Not
even
you,
shoot
Phil.
Nikon.
Not you, Phil. That's not who I'm talking about.
I know.
Calm down.
Well, actually, you know what? I should clarify something. I still do shoot Nikon. I have a Nikon D70 somewhere in this office. I'm not sure where it is. Battery's probably dead, but I do have a Nikon.
Well, I've got Herschel. I didn't even mention Herschel, the D70S with the infrared conversion.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you for that name, by the way, Phil.
You're welcome.
That was cool. Herschel was the man who discovered, I guess you could say, infrared light path.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
yeah.
Michael. Science. And so the Nikon 105 millimeter f1.4. Michael.
Yeah, I tried that out at the VizTech Expo, and wow, what a lens! It is phenomenal. Like I'm set for my 105. I have the 105 2.8G, the newer macro lens, and it's one of those lenses that's so good and so sharp and just so right that Nikon just went, we're done. We're not going to replace it. It's done. No one needs a new one, and just. That holds its value so well because everyone knows it's just a phenomenal lens. No one's going to beat it. It's
Right.
the lens. And the Nikon 105 1.4 is not a macro lens. You can't really completely use it for the same purposes. But it's made a lot of people, even in my boat, that already have a 105 go, yeah, I want one. And it's like it's a big price tag, but it's phenomenal quality.
Yeah.
Absolutely buttery smooth. I tested it out and I shot someone 25, 30 feet away from me. And it's still like, this is the kind of the super blurred background that you get out of a lens when you shoot a close-up headshot and you see everything melt away. This guy was 25 feet away from me, just a random person in the crowd, and the background behind him just melted.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
I was watching it out of a $50,000 beautiful like film cinema camera.
That is the beauty of it. And I am going to share our good buddy Dan Sharp's photos. So Dan was kind enough. Dan picked up the 105 1.4. And he was kind enough to take some shots and share them with us. He goes, hi, all. Thought I'd share something with you. I've been trying to decide between the 70-200 2.8 version 2, the new Nikon 105 f1.4. Specifically, I wanted a particular lens to shine in portraits. I haven't concluded my comparison tests, but I wanted to show the difference in bokeh, sharpness, compression with both lenses. When both lenses were shot wide open at closest focal distance, weigh in with which photo you think looks better. So I shrunk down the shot from 105 to make the same size 70-200 for a close comparison. Now, I don't know photo details. That'll probably tell me. Okay, so this is the 105 f1.4, and that's the 2.8. So just pay attention to, all the little lines in the background. You can't see my mouse moving, and then I'll go back here. There's the 1.4.
That's impressive.
So shallow, so smooth. That bokeh is just butter.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, thank you.
Yes.
That's very cool. Oh, here's the side by side.
Side by side's cool.
Huh. That is pretty sweet. That's a great
Yeah.
comparison. So anybody who is looking to choose between the 70-200 f2.8 or the 105-1.4 for portrait, I hate to say it, but I think there's a clear winner there.
Yes.
That-
It's Canon.
That is the that is the only word that comes to mind when I picked up that lens, when I shot with that lens, is butter. When you're looking at the bokeh, and even the manual focus, when you're manually focusing with that lens, like it felt like German engineering there. They engineered that lens with love.
That's good.
Like, there's only so many things you can say about it, and let's just say all of them.
All of them. Yeah, I like Gord's comment. Juicy. That's absolutely
Yeah.
true. Okay, so now we're going to talk quickly about video because we should, and we're going to make this fairly straightforward. There are 4 cameras we're going to talk about. In order of price from cheapest to most expensive, we're talking about the Canon HFR 700, the Sony AX33, the Sony AX53, and the Sony FDR AX100. These are 4 cameras that would suit pretty much anybody.
Mhm.
So the general consumer, $300, HFR 700, very straightforward little camera. It doesn't have any manual controls, but it has a mic input.
Yep. And
Which
headphones out.
And headphones out, which is very
important.
cool. And, you know, I mean, it's got a little bit smaller sensor than the other cameras, a little bit smaller. So it has a massive telephoto lens. It goes with what we were saying before. We're talking about a 38.5 to 1,232 millimeter comparable focal length.
Yep.
It's a 32 times optical zoom. It's pretty good. AVC HD video format. So it's not full HD, but it looks awesome.
Yep.
And this is, again, you got to ask yourself, guys, what are you using this for? Are you a parent and videotaping your kids' drama performances, their recitals, their graduations, swim meets, and stuff like that? This is probably perfect for you.
Yeah. You're not too concerned about sound, but you want something that looks good that you don't have to dump a ton of time at editing.
Yeah, exactly. The AX33, the step up from that, it's only got a 10 times zoom because this one has a little bit larger sensor, which is actually more the sensor size of like a Panasonic FZ200 or other point and shoots.
Yep.
Still pretty good though. It has no headphone jack,
But it does have a mic in.
but it does have a mic in, which is important. So now we're talking about real HD,
Yep.
1920 by 1080p, great quality. And again, for the price, awesome value. The step up from that, the AX53. So now we're talking about more of a developing video shooter. This is the terminology Ross used when he explained this one. I think that's brilliant. The developing video shooter. So if somebody, I would say like I was when I was in high school, where I wanted to make movies and I wanted to make commercials and I wanted to play around and have fun. Like we made little movies in Vermont where we would have Doug Hillock buried in the snow and some snowshoer would walk over and he'd jump out and kill him. And, you know, people getting thrown off motorcycles and stuff. It was fun, you know, kid stuff. But double-headed axes coming to anyway. It was fun. It was awesome. And this is probably the camera I would have used for that because now you have UHD, true high-definition video with 30p, a decent-sized sensor, 20 times optical zoom, a 16:9 obviously aspect ratio. And it's funny, I didn't realize, but you can actually pull 8.8 megapixel still clips from the video.
Which is enough to make a pretty decent sized print.
Yes, absolutely. And this thing's about $1,250. So solid choice, not quite cheap, not redonkulously expensive.
Yeah. But speaking of a bit more expensive.
Go for it.
Oh, I was just leading into that for you.
Oh, thank you, Phil.
You're on a roll.
The FDR AX100. Now, this is the beefcake in the general consumer market. This is the one that has 14 megapixel stills if you pull clips, built-in ND filters.
Which is cool.
Yeah, explain why that would be cool.
So a built-in neutral density filter allows you to basically adjust how much light's coming into the camera on the fly. So if you have everything set up how you want, and you're going to be going from a darker area to a lighter area, instead of being like, well, now I got to kind of change my settings as I go, there's a little adjuster on it. You can basically kick in the neutral density filter once you hit that light area, keeping all the same settings or all the very similar settings and the same look to the video. Instead of it going properly exposed, a little bright, and then adjust, it's just properly exposed, switch it in place, still properly exposed.
Exploded. It exploded real good.
Wouldn't that still give you an exposure kick, though?
It depends.
Depending when you did it.
And when you did it, yeah.
Yeah. But the nice part with this is, just like the other ones, well, almost all the other ones, microphone input and a headphone jack. So if you have someone who is shooting a lot of video, they really care about sound, they really care about video editing, they want to get in and make it as good as they possibly can at the end of the day, this thing's going to let them get that result.
And always remember, get fast memory cards.
Yes.
That was the biggest eye-opener, I think, in the conversation, is how McMarketing kicks in, and you end up thinking you have this great card, and then you find out that you start dropping frames and you start having issues and, you know, bogging down and shutting off and overheating and just being stupid. So memory cards are so important if you don't have the right card. And remember, Transcend, ATP, Kingston, Kodak, goes on and on and on. All these really cheap cards are just that. Don't get them. They're cheap. SanDisk, Lexar, preferably SanDisk in my opinion. What do you think, Phil?
I'm kind of on the fence between the two of them. They both seem to work for me. They both are supposedly the same quality. So as long as you're looking at apples and apples, it really shouldn't matter. That being said, I do shoot a SanDisk card.
And remember, 95 megabits per second minimum, megabytes per second minimum for full HD. Michael, are you going to say something?
I was going to say it is a very Coke and Pepsi argument.
Yes.
But I personally shoot Lexar, and I was looking at their warranties and everything. When you're looking at the professional line on both cards, they have pretty much the same like unlimited lifetime warranty, and that's really what you're looking for. That should be your bottom level of any card that you buy, should be a series of cards that has that unlimited warranty. I don't care how good it is or how long it's going to last. They will eventually stop working.
Yeah.
But if you buy a good card, no matter how much it costs, you're only buying it once.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, if I go into my case here, I have a memory card that I bought when I first really started shooting digital. Well, not digital. When I started shooting with Nikon, I'll ignore my Olympus days. I bought this thing probably close to 6 years ago. And if I wanted to, I could put it in my camera and it still would function. Albeit I wouldn't be able to store that many pictures on it, but it's still going to work. So memory cards are one of those things that a lot of people look at, and we see a lot of people look at it and say, but I could buy it for $20 or I could buy it for $10, but you're not getting the quality. But more importantly, you're not getting the speed. And if you don't have a card that's going to keep up with your camera, then your camera's not going to do what you paid for it to do. Like, we have cameras we were talking about today that'll shoot 10 frames a second. So let's pretend you're shooting a raw picture. On average, that's going to be 30, 35 megabytes per image. If you can shoot 10 frames a second, that means every single second that you're continuously taking pictures, you're shooting about 300 to 350 megabytes. That's a ton of information. If you have a card that writes at best 10 megabytes a second, you're going to shoot 4 pictures before the camera stops.
And then you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait. And then why is that little red light on in the back?
Yeah.
Why isn't it a red light turning off? What's going on? How come I can't take pictures?
And it's just locking your camera up until it finishes. And so if you're out shooting your kids' soccer game and they're running to get a goal and you're excited and it's click, 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 click. Actually, it'd be more like click, 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 click. And by the time the camera stops working, and by the time you realize it stops working, everything that you wanted to shoot is gone. So yeah, you can buy one for $10, but if you buy one for $35, you're probably not going to have an issue.
And that's the difference, you know. We're not talking about $400 or $500 difference.
Now, there are times you will need to buy that $140 card. If you are shooting full high-definition video in a full high-definition video camera, yeah, you're going to spend a ton on your memory card.
Yeah, like in this AVC, X100. This thing is, you have to have the expensive cards.
Yes.
It's just you need 64 gig minimum.
Yep.
And you need ultra high speed. You're paying $200.
Yeah.
At the time of this show right now.
Yes.
I mean, tomorrow they're probably going to be $25 and change. But
yes, but as of now, they're expensive.
Yes.
And we're going to see that hopefully come down as solid state memory becomes more available, because that's all we're looking at for memory card is it's solid state. So now that hard drives are switching to solid state and that technology is becoming more and more out there, it means to make it good is cheaper. The research that went into it is starting to get paid off. So we're going to start to see that price curve start to come down.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I started shooting digital, a like 256 megabyte card was probably $100. Now you can't buy a 256 megabyte card.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll never forget my first 6 months working at Henry. Somebody came in and they said, "Well, I can get this 2 gigabyte card over there for $79.99." We had it for $150, and I'm like, "Yeah, right. That'll never happen."
Now you can buy a 2 gigabyte Transcend for $9. As a side note, don't buy a 2 gigabyte Transcend.
So I was just thinking, like, how Daytripper Photo is not responsible for anybody buying Transcend memory cards.
Yes.
Now,
quickly scroll.
To quickly go back to the Lexar SanDisk conversation, the Lexar Professional Card SD, putting it into my Mac SD reader, which is kind of rough on the edges, metal.
Yep.
Putting it in there, those little plastic tabs that separate the bus bar on the back, on the bottom of an SD card, caught and it broke 2 memory cards. And they're not usable until I snip off the little plastic separators, and then I can use it again. But now I have just the bare bus bar. So 2 Lexar memory cards had that happen. Now, technically, I can send these back to Lexar, and they would replace them. That's the warranty. That's what they do. I just suck at doing stuff like that. So I ended up snipping the things off and keeping on going. The SanDisk ones, though, are kind of smoothed. Yeah. And they don't do that. And those things are waterproof, and you can put them in your jeans pocket and wash your jeans in the machine.
In theory, they should all be waterproof.
In theory. But if those little plastic thingy-doos are broken, technical term, I don't think I would trust the waterproofness of that card. Prooficity.
Got it.
Okay, so let's quickly go over accessories because we're already like 15 minutes past our show. There are things called stabilizers and video lights and sliders and all kinds of really cool accessories that you can get for your camera stuff. I'm going to suggest, obviously, look around, price shop, be very aware of what's out there because there's a lot of different brands that are the same. For example, Henry's, our brand is called Cameron.
Yep.
When Booth Electronics went out of business, we bought the company, and now we use Cameron, which is their brand. We have a product called the VS700. I'm going to share what this thing is. It is a very straightforward, easy to use, monopod type camera stabilizer. As you see, it is $250. It's got a little handle. You mount your camera to the top. It's got counterweights at the bottom, and you can extend the bottom out to be a monopod. So you can literally set it on the ground and get proper stabilization, which is great. If you were to look at competitors, say, for example, B&H Photo out of the United States, they have this product, which is the exact same, called the Axler Robin 20 stabilizer. Now, in B&H, it's obviously American. It's $200. Ours is $250. We're talking about the same exact product. The same exact thing.
Yep. Well, theirs has red bits and ours are blue.
Exactly. Red bits and blue bits. If you attach this to your cart, there is then $42 and change in customs fees. So it's the same price.
Well, it's actually more. Because if you look at it right now, based on our exchange rate, you're roughly looking at about a 30 to 32% increase on whatever American price is out there because our dollar's not doing that great. So
yay, Canada.
It's $100. Sorry, you're $200, but if you're paying 30% more, you're now at $260, and that's before you even paid any duty or anything like that. And sometimes you can miss duty. Sometimes the Customs Canada just lets things pass through. This time of year, they're not as friendly.
Well, they add it right at time of purchase on that invoice.
that's fantastic.
It's
So
fantastic.
you're no way around that.
That's right. So anyway, that's a decent quality stand-up monopod rig. They're about $200, $250-ish. And then the secondary kind of product would be the shoulder rig. Now, again, the concept here, guys, is to keep your camera steady.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not all jittery and bouncy. And
Now, this is for video. We're mainly looking at this for video.
because this isn't fun to watch.
No.
Sorry, had to do it. So anyway, if you have a stabilization system for video, exactly. Thank you, Phil. Things look smoother, funnier.
Yes. They look more professional.
They
And
do.
that's the thing. You're trying to make your videos smoother, more professional.
It's that extra 10%.
Yes.
It's always about the extra 10%. So there's this other product called the VS800. Now this thing is about $250 as well. It's a shoulder rig that's quite flexible. You can move the handles, you can move the rods, you can get it up in here and down there and all over the place. It's not quite high end. I'm not even going to say it's close to high end, but for $250, pretty good value. Have you ever considered though spending $6,000 on a rig?
Yes.
Have you?
No.
Have you really?
No.
Okay, well, if you had, it would look kind of like this. Not me. This is not what it would look like. It would look like this.
Ah,
So
right.
we're talking about the full rig kit, DJI Ronin. These aren't $6,000. You're talking anywhere from $1,400 to $3,000 American, of
Mhm.
course. So yes, 6,000 Canadian. But we're talking about a product that you can literally jump up and down with and go side to side and have the camera float and be very steady. This is not what I'm trying to claim the Cameron VS800 will do.
No. But it'll be better than you hand-holding it.
Exactly.
And
And
that's important.
Well, that's exactly important. That's all it is about. So for $1,400, you can get this rig right here, the Ronin M. I know somebody who has this, and Chris Howe, awesome dude. He's going to be speaking at the Daytripper Expo this year. I hope he brings us with him because it is quite an impressive doings. And you can get this. I saw him actually using it at a wrestling event, Carrot Fest in Bradford, and yeah, I was pretty impressed. He was able to spin the camera and still have it work properly. It was pretty sweet. So yeah, that's what you would get if you spent ridiculous amounts of money for the proper product. But we don't all have that kind of cash, right?
Yeah.
So
If you did.
but if you did, do it because it's awesome. And that's what I always say. If you can afford the good stuff, get it because it does make a difference. You get what you pay for in a lot of cases. Now, speaking of get what you pay for, we've tried the 7 Oak rails, the sliders. And 7 Oak is a brand that Henry's had. And I am going to say it. I don't like it.
Those were the ones that had the Teflon on the inside, right? Instead of
The
wheels.
aluminum rods.
Yeah, they were a good idea in theory. They were just overpriced for what they were.
And you had people who bought these things who would take silicone and lubricate the rods so that it would actually go smoothly, and still that didn't work. And of course, when
As
it's
soon
all
as the-
siliconed up, you can't return it.
Yeah.
So
And when the silicone gets stuff stuck to it, because that happens, because it's a grease effectively, then it works even worse.
yeah, exactly. So we now have the Cameron 80 centimeter and 120 centimeter sliders, and they are pretty good. Phil, we used one for the Camp 30 video.
We did, and Navi and I were playing with one the other day.
Yeah, they're
And,
actually really good.
They're, for what you pay for, they're great. They're not gonna match something that you'd pay $700-800 for, but for pretty cheap, it's good.
$250, $300 ish for
And
a
they
nice
have-
long rail.
Yep.
Lots of
And they got-
mounting options.
More than enough holes on it so that if you wanted to buy or build a mechanical, pulley system to pull the camera across, you could very easily do that. So if you're interested in time lapses and making your still images, maybe you're going to do a time lapse of the night sky or a time lapse of a city and you wanted to add a little bit of motion to it, something like this and an egg timer and some string, you can do some great stuff.
And bubble gum and a clothespin.
Absolutely.
MacGyver much. But no,
To
absolutely.
get cool results, you don't need to spend a ton.
No, I look at what Peter McKinnon, he's been on our show before. He was in Blackpool, England, I think, and he was shooting a video where he was destroying a hotel room.
Okay.
And he needed a slider, but he wasn't going to ship his slider, his Cinovate 10-pound slider to Blackpool, England. I mean, that would just cost him more than the trip itself. So he ended up using the ironing board in the hotel room and a Bible. He put the camera on the Bible and just slid it back and forth. I mean, it's being creative that matters. It's not the gear.
I should jump in with something, actually, on the topic of video gear. Between sliders and especially video pan heads, because I've done this quite a bit now with pan heads when I had to do video, an elastic band is your best friend. If you want to get a really, really clean movement with anything sliding, panning, put an elastic band on it and tug on the band. And that'll give you really, really clean movement, because it's not going to have that stop and start jerking motion when you begin the pan. If you want to actually start moving while you're filming, you get that really, really subtle movement from pulling on the elastic and letting the tension do the work for you.
That's a really smart tip.
That's
Cheapest
super clever.
and smartest DIY I've ever heard for video, and a lot of people do it.
Very cool. That's something I'm definitely going to talk about. The last thing on our list as far as gear goes is the most important thing when you think of photography.
Crafts?
Drawing with light.
Light. Let there be light. Yeah, sorry, it's late. So lighting, there's all kinds of different lighting you can get for video. Those little Manfrotto Lumi Cube things.
Yeah.
Those things are sweet. They're not super expensive, maybe $150. And it's an 8-light, tiny little sucker, which you can use colored gels and all kinds of neat things. I'll do a quick screen share here and show you all what I'm looking at if I can. Here we go. Cool. So this is the Manfrotto Lumi Muse 8-light LED. It's tiny. If you look at the hot shoe, it's tiny.
It is
hot
very
shoes
tiny.
are very small. You can put the color temperature orange gels. You can change the color temperature. It's on sale for $150 right now. It's awesome. 5600 color temperature.
Midnight.
Pardon me?
Till midnight.
Till midnight, right? It's 4-step dimmable. It goes on and on and on. Battery life is an hour on this thing. So definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
550 lux. I mean, that's bright.
Yeah.
Very cool. So that's something to think about. Nice little light you can get. And of course, there's all kinds of those standard square lights, tons of LEDs. Now, I'm going to give a suggestion. If you're going to be buying LED lighting, get them to have the color balance control.
Yes. It'd be an extra little bit, but it'll save you.
It will. I mean, if you use a white light in a room that's full of yellowish kind of color, it's unnatural. You have this orange background and you have a white light on your model. Not that great. That's why I like that Lumi thing, because it comes with those CTO gels. If you're in an orange environment, put in a CTO. Orange on orange looks the same. At least you can color balance that better. So these bigger panel lights, I'm going to, again, I guess I'll do a screen share just so you know what I'm talking about. It's a larger panel, and they have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different LEDs, and they're usually model numbered after the number of LEDs they have. So this one is the 672 LEDs. But if I show you the back, there's a knob right there. It says 5200 to 3200 Kelvin, and you can literally turn the knob and the yellow and the white lights toggle themselves to blend to a certain color temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Super, super handy. Great little tools. And they're not huge. You can mount them on a little light stand beside you. You can mount them on the top of a camera if you want to. A lot of people use rigs with all kinds of cheese plate on top so they can mount all kinds of lights and different things to it. Lots of cool things you can get. And again, those are not ridiculously expensive. That light I was just showing you is $300 for a 672 bulb LED. So very good stuff to have. Definitely consider lighting and getting into videography, and try and get something with color temperature control.
Yes.
All right. That was a lot of stuff. You think we covered everything?
I think so.
Anybody who's watching have any other questions for us, please let us know. Thank you very much for the comments that you've given us so far, and thank you for continuing watching the show up until this point. We have just 2 more things to talk about. I think 1, 2, three more things. The first is, since we've talked about all the gear that you could potentially get, what do we think is one of the most essential things every photographer should have? So let's go down the list here. Michael, why don't you start? What do you think is the most important thing a photographer should have?
See, I was going to say one thing that I put in the notes, but I've changed my answer now that I've thought about it more.
All right.
Because the Wacom pen tablet has probably made the biggest influence on my editing, my workflow, sped up everything, made everything so much easier. I have to say hands down, for anyone that's going to spend any time on the computer editing their photos, get a tablet.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that.
Get a tablet.
You and Phil both say it. Ross says it. Everybody swears by it. I must be slow because
I think it depends on what you shoot.
I can't handle using a tablet. I use the trackpad on my Mac and do all my edging and do everything just with my trackpad.
We need to get you a tablet.
It's just like a pen.
I had a tablet.
I promise you, it's a short learning curve.
Yes.
The learning curve is there, but once you actually get familiar with using a pen on the screen, or using a pen in relation to the screen, in my case, oh god, you'll never go back.
Everybody says it. I tried for 2 weeks, and I never went to it.
I wouldn't use it for editing like my landscape pictures and stuff. Any people picture where I'm getting into skin softening or eye brightening or teeth whitening, that kind of stuff, where I want a little bit more control, the pen's awesome.
Yeah.
Depending on what I'm doing with landscapes, it's not going to be the most useful thing. But for people, it's awesome. Makes selections that much easier.
Any suggestion on which tablet to consider?
Only Wacom.
Yeah, pretty much any Wacom. They're good to go.
A lot of people like the Bamboo series. I recommend, if you're really going to take it seriously, go straight for the Intuos. Intuos is by far extremely advanced. They just annihilate any opponents right now. I have the medium. It's a bit small for my monitor, but it fit well on my desk. I've got no problems with it. So I've been using Wacom tablets for at least 4 years now.
Super useful. Now, for those of you wondering, the Bamboos are the starter kits, the entry-level point. They have less pen pressure control, but super useful. And if you're just starting out, not sure if you're going to like it, you can probably find someone who bought one and didn't understand it and is selling it for pretty cheap. Or if you buy a new one, it's still pretty cheap. And then the Intuos would be your next level up. Kind of like going from a Canon Rebel to a 5D. That kind of thing.
Gabriel says, sing it, Wacom brother. And Carrie says, can't retouch without it. Gabe has the Intuos large and the small one. Yeah, Gabriel's always liked his too.
Oh, yeah. It's just too much to like.
Does it matter if you know how to draw? Because I have
I can trace. And that's all you need to know how to do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll revisit that. Good advice. Phil, what do you think?
Well, I have two things. One's out, one's not. But I would say a good bag. Because if you can't carry your stuff comfortably or you can't fit what you want to carry, nothing you can do. Now, I'm a fan of your bag. I'm very strongly thinking about changing out my bag for that one. I would still keep my old bag, but a good bag to carry everything. The other thing...
Before we get to that point, remember, good bag. Everybody has more than one bag.
Oh, absolutely. I've
got a home base. That's where I'll carry everything.
Yep.
What we're talking about here is the Everyday Messenger bag from Peak Design. I freaking love this bag. This is it's my everyday bag. I carry all of my daily stuff in here to work and back every day. I walk everywhere I go. To the studio, I can carry my laptop, all my notebooks, my camera, the battery chargers, my personal stuff, my asthma inhaler and ear Q-tips and whatever I want to carry. This thing holds it all. So I definitely recommend it. It's well made and so on. Lifetime guarantee. But also, Phil, what were you going to say?
Well, I like that style of bag, but the other thing that I would potentially put on my interesting stuff to get list, it's not out yet, and it won't be out until 2017, but it's kind of like a tablet, but it's a control interface.
Ah, yes.
For Lightroom. So instead of having to press buttons and make adjustments, it's basically all of your normal stuff in one place. And I want to get one of these in my hands. If they're watching, which they're not, because it's like a small team in Switzerland. If they are, then awesome. If not, then that's okay. Or Finland, sorry. They're in Helsinki. But effectively, it is a control interface where you have all of your Lightroom controls, your ratings, your flaggings, that kind of stuff, main brightness adjustment, contrast, that kind of thing, all in one place. And I want to play with this because it's like a keyboard and mouse in one. I think it would be awesome. So there's 2 days left on the Indiegogo campaign, and I am very, very, very seriously considering going in on it. I usually like to wait till these things come out. In this situation, I think if I can get it as early as possible, that'd be great. If I could convince a company to carry it, that would be even better. But I'm super interested in that.
You borrowed one.
I did. I checked out. Uh-oh. Did I freeze everything? No, I'm still good. I checked out one called the Palette. And the Palette was a very similar idea. It was a little series of clips, and you could stick them together, and they'd have little sliders and stuff. But it seemed cumbersome, and it seemed ludicrously expensive. Because the starter kit was like $450, and that only really gave you like 4 or 5 controls. This thing gives you a lot more than that for less money, and that seems to me like a better option.
Yeah, here's the Palette Aluminum Professional Kit.
Yeah. And so you're getting not even as many controls, and it's like $710, $720. It's a little ridiculous. And those controls, the sliders, are not self-resetting. So if you made a slide and then you went to the next picture, it's not reset. So you have to reset. There's a couple weird design features that I'm not a fan of on that. Which is why I think the other idea with the just digital turn knobs or the really unlimited up and down sliders, I think are the better option.
Just want to quickly jump to the chat. Don has taken off. Good night to you, sir. Thanks for watching. And Gabriel says he can't trace even, so he does.
That's okay.
Which I don't believe him. But anyway. All right, so that's pretty cool. So we're pretty much done. Thank you. I guess the only thing that I have left to say is one of the most valuable tools that I have ever had is the Leatherman. Having a good little tool that you can do. There you go. Phil's got his.
Well, it's a Gerber.
Yeah,
just to be different. Canon versus Nikon.
I have a Leatherman somewhere. Clearly, it's a Nikon thing then.
Yes, clearly.
I think so.
So I mean, these things have lifetime guarantee. If they ever break, they just give you a new one. You mail it to them. They give you a new one.
Well, that's if you can break it.
Well, I've had 2 over the past 20 years. I've had 2, and one of them, the screwdriver piece broke. And I was in the store, and I was talking to one of my customers. I mentioned it. She goes, "Oh, I work for Leatherman." So she went out to a car, and she gave me another one.
That's awesome.
Using the other one, I was out with my fence trying to bend back the metal hooky-doo that locks. There I go again. The hook. I have no real words for anything, okay? I just used something with "do" at the end. So the latch, and I was trying to bend it back, and the entire piece broke right off. Like
on the plier?
On the plier. The entire half of the plier broke right off. So I was like, "Oh, you kidding me?" No, I was pissed. So I mailed them both back to Leatherman, and they gave me 2 brand new ones. Just like that. So awesome little tool. Always have it on me. Always. And they're just awesome. That flashlight's also another thing. And of course,
oh, that's bad.
We all wanted to say the lens pen, but at the same time, we have other cool things we wanted to talk about. So, absolutely.
For the record, I called dibs on that one.
You did.
It is actually in the notes under you.
Yeah, it is. But that's okay. That's okay. Okay, guys, that was awesome. We got over a lot of stuff. We talked.
Yes.
Oh, can't speak anymore. I know. I'm all verklempt. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. Donald Trump.
Oh no! Okay.
Oh, yeah,
almost won an episode. Almost.
Oh god.
He's the dude, Don Komarachka.
Yeah.
No. Okay, everybody, take a shot.
And on that note, good night.
Okay, so just want to remind everybody of the current photo challenge, which is you better watch out.
Yes.
There's been some awesome
really
shots,
unique ideas, like things that I wasn't thinking about. That I'm like, that makes perfect sense.
Loving it. Loving what you guys are doing for these challenges. So good. So you better watch out. Please submit your photos. December 7th is our next photo review show, which is our next show, which is also episode number 200. 200.
I don't know. Noises.
and we'll never make it to 200. But ultimately, guys, we're going to leave you with our quote of the day. When it comes right down to it, the quote from Percy W. Harris is, "Skill in photography is acquired by practice and not by purchase." Don't forget it. Skill in photography is acquired by practice, not by purchase. So even though we've talked about all kinds of cool camera stuff, even though there's all this great equipment out there, the bottom line is you have to think about the photo you want to make and know how to make it using the tools and the settings that are in front of you. So keep it up, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I know we ran late today, but there was a lot to talk about.
Just a little. Just
a bit. Michael, sir, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Anything you'd like to add before we say goodnight?
I think that's it for me.
All right, brother. Phil, Mr. Zerato, anything you'd like to say before we say goodnight tonight?
I think we covered quite a bit.
More than
enough. But as always, if you have questions, post them. We'll happily answer them.
Absolutely. And thank you to everybody who has posted sample photos, like Dan with the 105 1.4 aperture lens, and just everybody who's been contributing to the Daytripper community. We have over 480 people now. I'm stoked. I'm so excited for this. I've recently left the Newmarket Camera Club community, and I'm really excited to see our Daytripper group doing better and more people being active. So thank you all so much. Keep on watching. Keep coming back. Check us out next week for the photo review show. And that's everything. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This again.
Every time.
All right, I'll stop broadcast. Bye-bye.